It's a problem that really stinks. Pigeon droppings, dead birds, and bird body parts. Some of the concerns Northside residents have about the underpass at Logan and Western Avenues.
We warn you, some of the images could be graphic. Our man Charlie DeMar has this original report.
And you got a wing there, you've got a bird there.
Pest and wildlife expert Brian Nichols shining a light on a dirty, stinking problem.
Dead birds, live birds. Looks like we've even got some body parts of birds.
The gold mine these pigeons are flocking to is the underpass at Logan and Western Avenues.
A fecal matter gets airborne and people start to breathe that in. They can catch many diseases.
Look up, and the flying rats are nestled into the rafters.
There's a lot of damage that they can cause as well.
Down below, detached wings, dead birds, and droppings. Lots and lots of waste, several inches thick in some places.
The easiest way to say it is it's disgusting.
Not just an eye and nose sore for Reva Minkoff in the neighborhood, also a health scare, she says.
From a sanitation standpoint, it's not okay for something that's like this to stay this way for years, to be built up.
Don't let the dog eat it.
Harry Yeselevich's best friend got sick from tasting the sidewalk sampler.
It could cost quite a few dollars if you eat something that doesn't agree with them.
An outbreak of a deadly dog disease, and your dog could get it just like this, by sniffing. Good afternoon, I'm Rob Johnson.
I'm Erica Sargent. A warning for dog owners. At one veterinary hospital, half the dogs who tested positive have died. Rose Anteas tells you what to look out for in this original report.
This little guy is lucky to be alive.
So it was a long road for him, but he's back in action now, so.
That after 9 days of hospitalization for a disease called leptospirosis, a bacteria carried by wildlife like rats and passed in urine, so it ends up in puddles and cracks on the sidewalk.
If a dog is to lick that up or have some on their paw, lick their paw, then they can get the bacteria into their system.
At MedVet Chicago, 15 dogs have been diagnosed since June, a lot in a short time, says Dr. Hofberg.
The thing that's also made it this year a bit different is that these have been really sick cases.
Only half survived, but the 24-hour emergency clinic does see the most severe cases. Some dogs show no symptoms, but like Oliver, many will experience vomiting, diarrhea, lethargy, and when it's really serious, a lack of urination and kidney failure. It got so bad, Oliver's owners considered euthanasia.
Something in us wanted to keep trying, and so we did, and every day he got a little better thanks to the amazing vets.
But she is urging awareness and annual vaccinations. There's no guarantee your dog won't get sick, but it could save their life. So you're pretty lucky.
Yeah, I am. We're so happy to just have him back. We call him our little miracle dog.
Well, also concerning, this is contagious to humans who get many of the same symptoms. Good hygiene is critical, and whether in humans or animals, the disease is treated with antibiotics. But, Rob and Erica, it can be a very long road, and the care can be very expensive.
And we're only talking about dogs here that are getting this?
Cats, for some reason, seem to be immune to this.
And it is very costly, unless not a lot of people have pet insurance, but pet insurance would certainly mitigate the cost.
That's right. It can be thousands of dollars. And in this case, Angelica was lucky that she did have it.
Yeah, she really was hard.
You know what the blood is, babe? Want to hit the blood? Do you want to hit the gas? Yeah. Hit the blood, man. Hit the blood one more time, Nip. Hit the blood one more time. Yeah. Hey, oh no, that's enough, baby. That's enough. Because he about to smash that look. He high already. Yeah, that gas. Yeah, he just. Look, he crying.
Back with this Fox News alert this morning. U.S. forces in northern Iraq under attack. ISIS suspected of firing a mortar shell that may have contained mustard agent at a U.S. airbase. The terror group firing the rocket at the base located in an airfield about 25 miles south of Mosul. We are working on a new initiative in that area. U.S. military officials say nobody, thankfully, was injured, and that there is no sign among our military that they were exposed to mustard gas. Greg Palcott in our London bureau. So what more do we know about what's going on in this area and this incident, Greg?
Yeah, Martha, the important thing is that everyone is safe, as you mentioned, but it certainly is alarming. A rocket or a mortar was fired Tuesday night, we are told, at a base near Kiara, that's an Iraqi town recently won back from the ISIS militant group. Iraqi and some 500 U.S. troops are stationed there now, and Fox News can confirm a potentially deadly mustard agent. That's a powder form of the infamous mustard gas was detected on the shell. It's being double-checked now. 4 American soldiers were nearby. They went quickly into a decontamination process, but no bad signs have been detected from them. ISIS is known to have and have used chemical weapons. For example, a year ago, not far from this incident, some 60 Kurdish Peshmerga fighters were injured, blistering skin, difficulty breathing because mustard agent was used by ISIS. And earlier this month, U.S. planes knocked out a very big chemical weapons plant and storage site also used by ISIS just north of where this base is. Dangerous stuff, Martha.
Wow. So in terms of the bigger threat to U.S. forces and what precautions are being taken in this area that is really the last stronghold that we're trying to win back, right, Greg?
Absolutely. Precautions are being taken. We can tell you from our experience in embeds over the years, chemical weapons, protective suits are always carried with the soldiers. But we can also tell you from experience it is cumbersome and difficult to use. But yes, there is a real threat out there because there's a big offensive coming up maybe as early as next month to try to take back the city of Mosul, which is now being held by ISIS. It's expected to be a no-rules fight to the finish. Chemical weapons definitely expected to be in the mix, and they are plentiful. They could come from Syria, Martha. While Bashar al-Assad had to give up his weapons, chemical weapons, in 2013, it's expected he left over several hundred tons of the stuff that might be in ISIS hands. It could be left over from the Saddam Hussein regime in Iraq, and some of the stuff, like this mustard agent, is not too hard to use. And you can bet, Martha, that these terrorists will use it. Back to you.
In a separate terror case, a guilty plea from a Rhode Island man charged with terrorism, 25-year-old Nicholas Ravinsky admitting to conspiring to help ISIS. As WBZ's Christina Hager reports, prosecutors say he had a plan with 2 Massachusetts men to behead a conservative blogger.
Nicholas Ravinsky avoids the potential life sentence he would have faced had he gone to trial for plotting to help the terror group ISIS. I feel in the interest of myself and the people of the United States, I should pay for the crimes that I have committed, he told the judge. Ravinsky was arrested, along with another terror suspect, David Wright, after Boston police and FBI took down Usama Abdullah Rahim in a Roslindale parking lot last year. Police had said Rahim attacked officers with a knife. The 3 men had been under surveillance, suspected of plotting a terror attack. During the plea hearing, the prosecutor detailed a plan to behead anti-Islam activist Pamela Geller, reading excerpts from letters Ravinsky wrote to a friend in prison. One referenced plans to place their juicy heads for display. In another letter, he wrote, "This is going to be worse than Genghis Khan. Can't wait for them juicy necks."
Nicholas Ravinsky is a vulnerable young man who was seduced by extremist ideology. It's important to note he never actually hurt anybody, never came close to carrying out the outlandish plans that were discussed.
The charges Ravinsky has pleaded guilty to are conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism transcending national boundaries and obstruction of justice. He faces sentencing in March. At the very least, he could get 15 years behind bars, at the most 22 years.
At least a dozen police officers and several demonstrators have been hurt in violent protests following the fatal shooting of a black man in North Carolina. The unrest began late on Tuesday after Keith Lamont Scott was killed by a black officer after being mistaken for a wanted man. Despite that, police insist he posed an imminent deadly threat and had a gun. That version strongly differs from the 43-year-old's family, who claim he was disabled and didn't have a firearm. Amid an intense debate in the US over the use of deadly force and racial bias among law enforcement officers, Scott's shooting came only a day after police in Oklahoma also admitted killing an unarmed black man on Friday. Terrence Crutcher was shot in the city of Tulsa after his SUV broke down. Video appears to show the 40-year-old walking to his car with his hands in the air before he reaches into his vehicle. His family have appealed for calm.
What we're requesting is that there be peaceful protests and that you all respect the culture of our family because we operate and we flow in love and in peace.
The US Justice Department has said it will conduct a separate investigation into that incident, while Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton described the video as unbearable.
Exactly what happened.
You want it on video so you can put it on the news, right?
No, we're on live,
That's
actually.
what you're trying to find out. If we got a video so you can elaborate out, make a fabricated story, right? You want a video so you can base a fabricated story on us, right?
Amen.
Right?
All right.
Right?
So that's some of what you saw last night on our air in Charlotte. That was Steve Harrigan there reporting when confronted by a protester. A few of them, in fact. Other journalists caught up in it, like this example from CNN.
Other people came in to try to grab those people.
He got up. He's okay. That's Ed Lavandera. And Ed's a big guy, and he can take care of himself, as he said right there. Howard Kurtznow, Fox News media analyst, host of Media Buzz on Sundays. And Howie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
In a general sense, how do you think and view the media covering this story so far?
I thought the coverage was good last night, and you know, for all of the disdain heaped on the media, this is a reminder of the important, vital work that journalists do when they're on the front lines in an urban riot zone. There's no other way to describe this, at great personal risk, because they're caught between the police and the protesters in a racially charged, tense situation. They get pushed around, as we saw with Ed Lavandera. They get abuse hurled at them, as our own Steve Harrigan did, because sometimes the journalists are seen as kind of a symbol of the white establishment. There was one local photographer who was the crowd attempted to push him into a fire, and so we've seen this in Baltimore and Ferguson and now in Charlotte. This is important, vital, but sometimes dangerous work.
Yeah, I want to share something with you from a TV station out of Charlotte too. They claim that this image here is evidence of a reporter being thrown into a fire. There was an attempt to put this photographer in a fire. It's hard for me to tell on screen there. But when you have cameras, when you have live reporters, it affects the way the story plays out, right?
Absolutely, and this is a dilemma I think we've never quite figured out how to resolve, which is, of course, cameras should be there to record what's going on the streets. It's an important news story in an important major American city in response to a disputed police killing. But at the same time, I can't help but conclude that when lots and lots of cameras show up, they act as a magnet for thugs and troublemakers and looters. You know, some of these people aren't just peaceful protesters, as we have seen in Charlotte last night and in other cities. And when we cover it wall to wall, I'm not saying it's not a vitally important story, but it might be, you know, a couple hundred people, and we might magnify the importance of the story because it just goes national when cable goes to saturation.
Do you find reporters judging the story already? This early on, that can be a dangerous thing. Do you have evidence of that or not?
I think there's more restraint this time because of what happened in Ferguson, because too many people in our profession rushed to judgment with the hands up, don't shoot narrative involving Michael Brown, which turned out to be false. Now, unlike in Tulsa, where you clearly had a black man who was not armed and who was shot and killed by a police officer, although we don't have all the facts there either, you have two very different accounts here of what happened to Keith Scott and whether or not he did have a gun, as the police say, or did not, as some eyewitnesses say. And so I detect, I think sometimes there's a natural tendency by too many in the profession to say, well, this is another example of cops out of control, and others say, well, this is, these people often have criminal records, and to try to put the fault on them. We don't know the full story here, and I did see more restraint, at least in the initial coverage, than we've seen in some of these other cases. I think that's a good thing, because it can look very different even from a piece of video when more evidence comes in.
Full justice requires not just charges, but a vigorous prosecution and a conviction.
Developing tonight, Tulsa, Oklahoma prosecutors have charged the officer who shot an unarmed black man last week.
Betty Shelby has been charged with first-degree felony manslaughter after shooting and killing Terrence Crutcher. His SUV stopped in a roadway last week.
News Edge anchor Tom Haynes here now with the latest on these new charges. Tom?
Well, Russ and Sine, it's what many have been calling for in the aftermath of the shooting that was recorded both on police dash cam and from a police helicopter above. An arrest warrant was issued for Betty Shelby, and arrangements have been made for her surrender. The complaint says that Shelby's fear, quote, resulted in her unreasonable actions, which led to her shooting Crutcher. Crutcher's family said they were grateful for the charges against Shelby. The family's attorneys also expressing gratitude to the Tulsa Police Department.
The only thing we wanted was a fair and transparent investigation so we could understand, because the family could understand why was Terrence Crutcher gunned down in the street.
Video released by police apparently shows Crutcher with his hands in the air as officers follow the man as he approaches his car, and Shelby is seen shooting that man. For her part, Shelby's attorney says that Crutcher was reaching into his SUV. She could face up to 4 years in prison if convicted. Russ?
All right, Tom, thank you.
Dozens of people have been killed in Indonesia after flash floods and landslides hit the cities of Garut and Sumedang in West Java province. Rivers overflowed and floodwaters reached up to 2 meters after just 3 hours of rainfall. Friends and relatives of people missing in the floods gather at this hospital. They search a board for names of their loved ones. Many families at this shelter reported several people missing following the torrential rain and floods. This man was evacuated with his 2 sons. He says, "I only hope for government assistance now as my house collapsed and all my things are gone." Rescuers continued searching for survivors after hundreds of homes were damaged, forcing many to evacuate. Flash floods and landslides are common in Indonesia at this time of year. They are usually caused by seasonal heavy rain. The area is expecting wet weather until early next year, peaking in January. An Israeli official said an attacker who tried to storm the Israeli embassy in the Turkish capital has been captured. According to a spokesman for Israel's foreign minister, the attacker was apparently armed with a knife. Turkish private broadcaster NTV said the incident happened as 2 people tried to enter the embassy in Ankara. Turkish police said the assailant shouted Allahu Akbar, or God is greatest, outside the embassy building before he was shot in the leg and wounded by a local security officer. It was not immediately clear if there was a second would-be attacker. Turkish media reports had initially suggested there had been 2. The Ankara governor's office said in a statement that the attacker, who appeared to be mentally unstable, had ignored a police warning to
Russia's
stop.
Navy will send its only aircraft carrier to the eastern Mediterranean. This is according to Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, who said the carrier will join other Russian ships deployed near Syrian shores. He didn't specify when it will be deployed, but Russian media reports say the mission is planned for mid-October. The Russian naval group in the eastern Mediterranean includes at least 6 warships and 3 or 4 support vessels. Officials from the Russian Defense Ministry said the aircraft carrier is likely to join Russia's anti-terrorist campaign in Syria.
Pope Francis and leaders of other world religions have said no to war and vowed to oppose terrorism in God's name. The declaration came at the end of a 3-day meeting held in Assisi, home of St. Francis, the patron saint of peace. Around 500 representatives of numerous faiths, including Christianity, Islam and Judaism, attended discussions on how their members could better promote peace and reconciliation.